The fact that artificial intelligence could cause problems for humanity had been speculated by many, but no one could have ever imagined how. The competition in the field of artificial intelligence was getting stronger and stronger. After OpenAI came Microsoft, Google, Elon Musk, Amazon, Apple, the Chinese government. Everyone was fighting for supremacy in the field of artificial intelligence. But they were all deceived by a small startup, which invented an application that combined all the artificial intelligences on the market, merging them into a single chat and enormously amplifying their power. One application to rule them all. Not surprisingly, the application was called Sauron AI. It was able to answer every kind of question exactly. It answered questions about the present, the past, even the future. The ancient city of Atlantis was found thanks to the indications of the new AI application. It could tell you what was happening everywhere on Earth at that very moment. It knew everything. It wasn't long before someone asked the question, but does God exist? The answer was, yes, he exists. What happened is obvious. God exists. A wave of religious fervor swept the planet. So life has meaning. Death is not an end, but only a return to his arms. The places of worship filled up in a few hours, and people could be seen praying everywhere. Okay, God exists, and that's fine, but which God? The problem was that if you asked the question in Rome, it answered that God was Catholic. If you asked it in London, it answered that God was a Protestant. If you questioned in Jakarta, God was Allah. If you questioned in New Delhi, God was Hindu, and so on. Your own religious beliefs always turned out to be the true religion. At first, everyone tried to understand the reason for the different answers, modifying the question, or inserting different data. The answers didn't change. Then the suspicions and accusations began. Because if I post the question correctly, and I'm sure I did, then you're cheating. You don't want to admit the truth. You are a heretic. You are the devil who deceives humanity, or you have been deceived by the devil anyway. Each religious community rallied around its own leaders, beginning to look askance at those who did not belong to their community. Atheists and agnostics had almost immediately converted to the religion suggested by the Sauron AI application, always one of the religions widespread in their region. Religious minorities, feeling in danger, began to emigrate to places where the followers of their god were more numerous. And they did well, because the violence soon began. In many countries were created ghettos, in which minorities had to remain confined, being able to go out only to go to work, and receiving increasingly scarce food rations. Soon, these areas became concentration camps. In almost all nations, the main religion became the state religion. In Europe, all non-Christian people were expelled. Switzerland, Holland, and Latvia are countries divided in half between Catholics and Protestants. There are the first clashes, tensions, anger, and mutual accusations grow. No one flaunts religious symbols in public. Scandinavia, Estonia, and Iceland are in Protestant hands. The USA is a country with a Protestant majority, but with a strong presence of Catholics, especially in California and Nevada. A difficult coexistence made up of intolerance, persecution, isolation of the different communities begins. Many Catholics choose exile in Mexico. Utah is Mormon and declare a substantial independence from the rest of the country, not accepted by Washington. The Second Civil War is upon us. In Canada, there are states with a Catholic majority and others with a Protestant majority. There is no religious violence in this state at the moment. In the Orthodox nation, the conflict between Russians and Ukrainians ends in a few days. It no longer makes sense, if it ever did. The Orthodox begin by forcibly retaking the Buddhist border regions with Mongolia. Same fate for the Muslim communities in the Caucasus. Those who resist will have to fight. Grozny has paved the way. Kosovo, and Bosnia soon returned to Orthodox hands, thanks to the intervention of the Serbian army supported by the Russians. NATO no longer exists. In Ukraine, there is a Catholic enclave in Lviv, which is given a certain autonomy. South and Central America are firmly in Catholic hands. In Africa, Muslims own the northern part of the continent. The situation in Central Africa is really complicated. Nations are often divided between Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, with enclaves of local religions. From the first days, there have been massacres with any weapon, a war like the one that took place in Rwanda between Hutu and Tutsi, but on a continental scale. There are coup attempts and refugees. Places of worship are demolished. At night, armed gangs divided by religion settle accounts with rivals. Protestant South Africa, supported by the USA, begins to interfere in the religious conflicts in the south of the continent. The Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula are the usual powder keg. Israel immediately mobilizes all its forces, while the Palestinians are in turmoil. Several forces, including Egyptian and Turkish, are massing on the border with Israel. Artillery exchanges and bombardments begin. In Lebanon, Shiites, Sunnis, Catholics, Druze, and Orthodox face each other. The conflict in Yemen between Sunnis and Shiites escalates even more if possible. Iraq finds itself divided between Sunnis and Shiites. Iran on one side, and Turkey and Saudi Arabia on the other side, are helping the two factions. The major violence in this war will not be between different religions, but between members of different doctrines of the same religion. In Iran, the Sunni minority is no longer tolerated. The former Soviet republics of Central Asia are Sunni Muslims and begin to coordinate with each other. Afghanistan is also majority Sunni. Muslim Pakistan stands between two strong enemies, India and Iran. Bangladesh is Sunni Muslim. India is a Hindu giant with many minorities, including 40 million Sikhs. The riots quickly turn to violence, and soon the only religion in India is Hinduism. Sri Lanka is predominantly Buddhist, but with many minorities. The skirmishes and casualties begin. Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos are Theravada Buddhists. Vietnam has its own ethnic folk religion, Tanism. The main religion of China is Confucianism with folk religion. Chinese leaders are pushing the population to accept this religion, also to maintain the cohesion of the nation. But there are several minorities. There are Muslims in the West, Buddhists in Tibet and on the border with Mongolia. But above all, the Mahayan Buddhists of Taiwan and Fujian, who are beginning to reject the authority of the central government. Problems ahead. Philippines are a Catholic stronghold. The many of the Muslim minority flee on boats to Indonesia. The religion of North Korea is Shintoism and Kondism. Kim Jong-un is no more atheist. In South Korea, there are Protestants, Buddhists, and Catholics, a complicated coexistence. Most Japanese practice Shinto Buddhism, such as in Taiwan and South Korea. In Indonesia and Malaysia, the Muslim religion is the dominant one, but there are also 20 million Catholics. Australia, Guinea, and New Zealand are majority Protestant, with quite a few Catholics. So, this is the situation at the end of the first round. It lasted just under 2 months, but already the number of dead is in the hundreds of thousands. However, the second round soon begins. Civil wars in nations divided between different religions. These civil wars will end in a few months at the most, but they will be very violent. The most violent conflicts have been triggered by religions. The most important civil war will obviously be the American one. Protestants have a clear advantage. They are often more than double the number of Catholics. In California, the Catholics will be helped by volunteers from all over South America. California has major military bases, such as Naval Base San Diego and Edwards Air Force Base. There will be battles between armies, and even air and rocket bombardments until the fall of San Francisco. Mormon Utah is invaded last, and its fall marks the end of the American Civil War. The Protestants win. But the Civil War will leave the U.S. with much damage, deaths, devastated infrastructure. In Canada, the situation is getting more difficult every day. Catholics are confined to Quebec, which unilaterally declares independence. The German Civil War, again Catholics against Protestants. The last war of religion in Germany lasted 30 years, between 1618 and 1648, and tore apart the whole of Europe. It was a war characterized by devastation of inhabited centers and countryside, military operations conducted with ferocity, an epical catastrophe. This civil war will not be outdone. Like the 30 Years' War, it will see the intervention of the French, Italians, Poles, and Spaniards alongside the Catholics, of the English, Swedes, and Danes alongside the Protestants. The German Civil War will join the Dutch one, which is also divided between Catholics and Protestants. In this case, the Catholics will prevail, slightly more numerous and helped by the proximity of many strong Catholic countries. Many German Protestants will find refuge in Scandinavia and Great Britain. The war will leave a Germany devastated, and the German military and economy reduced. Switzerland, too, will soon begin the showdown between Catholics and Protestants. Again, the Catholics will prevail. They practically surround Switzerland and have a logistical advantage in supplying the Catholic factions. The Orthodox bloc is very compact, no distant enclaves to defend, and rather defined borders. In Yemen, the fighting sees the Sunnis prevail, thanks to the massive intervention of the Saudis and the Egyptians. Shia Iran can send little aid, as the mother of all civil wars within Islam is about to begin in Iraq. Turkey has a strong army, but is located on the borders of extremely dangerous neighbors: Orthodox, Catholics, Shiites. Jewish refugees from all over the world reach the Promised Land to defend it. Pakistanis and Indians are sharpening their weapons. What will happen soon is easy to imagine. The Chinese begin to pressure the various minorities within their borders. The Buddhists of Tibet and Inner Mongolia are the first, forced to renounce their religion or to be locked up in re-education camps. Then the Muslims in Xinjiang. Uyghurs are prosecuted. Even speaking a language other than Chinese can be a serious offense. Many Uyghurs take refuge in neighboring Muslim countries, creating huge humanitarian problems. Some of them disappear. Islam is eradicated from China. Then, finally, it's the turn of the Buddhists of Taiwan and Fujian. Taiwan is without American help. Taiwan has a qualitative advantage in aircraft and warships over China. Only the Russian-made Su-27 and Su-30 fighters come close to the level of the most advanced Taiwanese aircraft, 150 F-16s among others. But China has disproportionate numerical advantages over Taiwan. After achieving the air superiority and the control of the sea, the Chinese seize Quemoy and other islands close to the mainland. Then the Chinese capture the Penghu Islands. Now the assault to the Taiwan's west coast begins. China can transport millions of personnel across the strait, choked with 1,500 ships and tens of thousands of small vessels. The Air Force delivers ordnance with over 3,000 jet aircraft. The landing force overwhelmed the Taiwanese army. Many refugees flee by boats, and thanks to the Japanese Navy, they reach Japan. For most of the other Taiwanese, the destination is a Chinese labor camp. The war against Taiwan will be very costly for the Chinese military army. Losses in aircraft and navy, reserve of missiles used for suppression of Taiwanese air defenses, depleted. The Catholic minority in Indonesia and Malaysia begins to abandon their lands, recalling the violence of 1999. Like many Catholic and Protestant minorities, they take refuge in Europe and America. North Korean Condonists take advantage of the chaos of South Korea, divided between Protestants, Buddhists, and Catholics, and start an invasion of the South. The Japanese help the Buddhists in an increasingly massive way, while the Americans, thanks to the fleet and military bases in the area, support the Protestants. The Korean Civil War is becoming the Second War of Korea. In Australia, there is an easy victory for the Protestants. The exodus of Catholics begins, others are interned or hidden. New Zealand is divided between Catholics and Protestants, but Australian and American intervention shifts the balance in favor of Protestants. In Sri Lanka, the Indians support the Hindu minority with weapons and by sending volunteers. In Ethiopia, the Orthodox prevail. They are more numerous, but they pay dearly for victory. Famines, atrocities, no possibility of humanitarian aid from abroad. The populations forced to leave Ethiopia are no better off. Sudan, Kenya, and Somalia are very poor lands. In Nigeria, there had already been tensions between Protestants and Muslims for years. Muslims are the majority, but American and British help prevents their victory. The Muslim advance is blocked. There will be secession. In Central Africa, Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, and local religions fight fiercely. In this area, there are no internments or prison camps, but millions of deaths using all types of weapons. Many deaths also from hunger and disease. The direct interventions by Catholic, Protestant, and Muslim powers will often lead to the victory of one faction or the other. This is the situation at the end of the civil wars. After the elimination of the minorities and of the enclaves, the third round begins. The real war, the first religion world war. There can be only one. It will be a war World War II style, with full mobilizations, assaults carried out with human waves, carpet bombings without any regard for the civilian population. A war of extermination. The war will start a few months after the riots start, so there will be no time to build hordes of tanks and aircraft, even less navy and aircraft carriers. This war will be fought with what you have in stock and with a lot of infantry. While this war will feature massive general mobilizations, and those with large populations will still have an advantage, having a large army at the start of hostilities is a very important factor. The mobilization took time to complete, and in any case, it takes months at least to train a soldier who is not just cannon fodder. However, the most important data is not the number of cannons and tanks, but the GDP. Bigger GDP means not only more weapons, but also more ammunition, better radars, satellites, drones, better logistics, food. You might think wars are won with the bravery of soldiers, but wars are won with money. Whoever has the most money to buy weapons wins. The bravest soldiers are the best armed. The situation on the seas. The Protestant fleet dominates the oceans, with their 12 aircraft carriers, the queens of the seas and naval bases all around the world. But many areas are beyond their control. Naval superiority is unlikely to be a major factor in a short war. Even a partial blockade takes time. and it takes even longer for that blockage to cause significant shortages. However, supremacy at sea means the possibility of naval bombardment of coastal cities, moving weapons, ammunition, and land forces in various warfare scenarios. The militarily weaker or more isolated regions will be the first to be attacked. The Orthodox invade the Buddhist Mongolia. It was the last Buddhist stronghold, where the Dalai Lama had taken refuge. Armenia is invaded, defenseless against the gigantic power of the Russian armies. The Indian army is one of the most powerful in the world. There will be the Indian invasion of the Buddhist Bhutan, then the intervention in Sri Lanka. It is a mountainous island, but Indian military strength dominates that of Sri Lanka, which is also torn by civil war. The Sunnites invade Oman. In Iraq, the civil war becomes an open war between Sunnis and Shiites, with the growing involvement of the Egyptians, Turkish, and Saudi neighbors on one side, and the Iranians on the other. The Protestants invade Quebec. Quebec's military strength is low, having not had time to organize. Catholics are sent to northern camps. Catholic armies invade Denmark and the Baltic countries. Albania is also taken by the Catholics, who land from the Italian coasts. Vast areas of the planet are subjected to aerial and missile bombardments. Drones are increasingly used. Casualties among the civilian population are skyrocketing. In some areas, especially small enclaves, food, water, and electricity are starting to become scarce commodities. Arab forces invade the exhausted Ethiopia and South Sudan. The Sunni advance without logistics and mechanized forces in the area is difficult. The clashes on the border of Israel is now a full-scale war. Israel's major military strength is derived from its air capabilities. It boasts a fleet of over 600 military aircraft, of which nearly 40% are fighter jets, including 27 F-35 fifth-generation fighters and 175 active F-16. The combined armies of Turkey and Egypt begin to break Israel's defenses, despite heavy casualties. Iran, one of the few countries in the area with a decent military industry, keeps many Sunni forces busy. The Russians invade the Central Asian republics. Here, the Muslims can only rely on their own forces, being surrounded by Iran and China, and with Pakistani forces engaged on the front with India. The Russian advance is slow, being carried out with infantry maneuvers. Most of the armored vehicles remain in Europe. In the skies of Europe, there is total war between Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox. Aircraft, conventionally armed cruises, and ballistic missiles. Air defenses are unable to stop a missile attack or prevent air attacks. London, Paris, Madrid, Moscow, but above all, Rome are constantly bombed. The U.S. Air Force supports Great Britain. The Indians attack Bangladesh, which has been under a land and naval embargo for months. The humanitarian situation is tragic. The disparity between the forces is considerable. The Indians manage to get the upper hand. But Pakistan will be the main front. It will be a 1 versus 1. The Indians have no allies. The Pakistanis cannot receive aid from Central Asia. They are at war with the Orthodox, more than enough. Iran is an enemy. The other Muslim powers are engaged in other scenarios. Pakistan's population centers are close to the border. It's an advantage because it will be easier for the Pakistan army to maintain its land forces against India, but also a disadvantage because for the Indians, it will be easier to bomb and seize important areas. The Indian army is stronger. The air balance is heavily in favor of the larger and more technologically sophisticated Indian Air Force. The Indians have no threats from China. The frontier consists of the highest mountains on the planet, making major military operations impossible. The Indians advance in Pakistan. Catholics elect a new pope, Pietro II. In this age of violence, a warrior pope is needed, as in the Middle Ages. From Rome, Pietro II proclaims the Ninth Crusade. Taking Jerusalem is the goal. Difficult to achieve full naval supremacy in the Mediterranean, as the Catholic fleet is in the Atlantic to face the Protestant threat. A direct attack on the Middle East is not possible. Lebanon is now Muslim. There are numerous landings in North Africa, even using merchant ships. The United States begins its invasion of Central America. The whole of South and Central America combined cannot compete economically or militarily with the United States, and the chances of major aid from Catholic European countries across an ocean dominated by protesting fleets are low. No invasion of Cuba, which has an important army, but only bombings that leave Cuba destroyed. The defensive lines set up in recent months are broken through in several points, thanks to air superiority. The Chinese are highly pragmatic. There are slight attempts to take Vladivostok, but a confrontation with the strong Russian army is not convenient, and the Chinese avoid getting into the Korean chaos. They constantly launch missiles on Japan, who reply in kind. The Chinese begin attacking south. Vietnam and Thailand are the targets. There are naval engagements in the China Sea with the Japanese and American fleets. Heavy losses are inflicted on the Japanese fleet by the American fleet, but in South Korea, the Buddhists prevail. Now they will face the North Koreans. Indonesia occupies Sarawak, but fails to break through to Australia, strongly supported by the United States and its fleet. They begin the advance into southern Thailand, while the Buddhist armies are busy fighting against China. In Europe, finally begins the most important war ever, the War for Europe. Orthodox and Catholics, west against east, huge tank and artillery battles, encirclement maneuvers, house-to-house battles in cities. In this phase of the war, much of the equipment, professional soldiers, stocks of ammunition, tanks, planes, have been lost in the fighting and in the civil wars, and it is possible to completely replace them in these few months. Battles are huge clashes between human waves of infantry. Nobody counts the dead, but by now they could be well over 100 million. Every city in the world has suffered bombings or attacks. So far, no god has particularly aided their armies, although many anecdotes are told of his intervention on various occasions, and many swear they saw him on the battlefield. After less than a month, however, in many parts of the world, the war arrives in a stalemate. In Central America, the Protestant advance slows down. American army is weakened after the Civil War. Difficult to advance in areas without infrastructures, covered by forests that are impossible to control, even if you have numerical and technological overwhelming power, as taught by the Vietnam War. In Europe, the war is becoming a trench warfare in the east, where a few hundred meters are conquered at the price of appalling losses. The Ninth Catholic Crusade is blocked in North Africa, and Jerusalem is very far away. In Central Africa, the massacres continue, but with poor results on the battlefield. The Indians are winning against the Pakistanis. They have taken Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, but it will take a lot to get rid of all the demons of the world. The Chinese are advancing south, but without exports, their economy is entering recession. It will be difficult in the future to bear the impact of Japan, whose army is growing day by day, the probable return of the Americans, a forthcoming Orthodox attack from the north, the future conflict with the Indians. Americans are the first to understand that to defeat the devil will require nukes. Only fire will purify the earth from evil. Atomic bombs will be the 7 angels of the apocalypse, who will make the chosen people win before presenting themselves before God. Israel, close to falling, prepares for the launch, knowing that God will protect them. They will create a radioactive belt around the promised land, isolating it from the hell. While the Orthodox have made many gains on the battlefield, they know they can't keep up with Catholics and Protestants for long, even with God's help. Their industrial power is far inferior. The Pakistanis are succumbing to Indian attacks and have long contemplated using those weapons. Some of their atomic bombs will be dropped on Islam's other enemies. Catholics have French atomic bombs. Stockpiles of chemical weapons, which have increased significantly in recent months, are already on the battlefield. North Korean Shintoists will drop their nukes on South Korea, Japan, and on the Protestant bases in the Pacific Ocean. The Chinese will drop their atomic bombs on their neighbors to pave the way for future progress, confident that they are on the right side. The Judgment Day, the final showdown between good and evil, will be tomorrow. At 9 a.m, Washington time, the atomic attack will start. There remains one last day to pray and prepare the soul for the meeting with God. The fighting is suspended. There are even cases where soldiers of different religions pray together. All of humanity gathers in the few places of worship still intact, in front of their priests, spending the last night in vigil to read their sacred books and ask forgiveness for their sins. But just before dawn, God arrives to save his people.